Okay, all right. Um, Hello, Dave from Planet on
Hello.
Shame. How are you?
Hello. Good. How are you?
Good, doing well.
Okay.
We haven't been talking for 10 minutes before this. um, Thank you for participating in a series that I've been doing since March called On Tyranny. And it's through my website called The Bad Penny. And just to give you a little bit of an overview of the series, I had a bit of an inkling after January 20 that maybe things might get kind of interesting in this country. And so I began to talk with artists around the world musicians around the world who live under authoritarian regimes and to talk to them about how they're able to make their art and how they can kind of deal with being an artist in a society with a political, structure regime like that. With threats of censorship and disappearances and oppression and all that. Um, so um, so from about March through June or so, I would say, I interviewed artists from, Russia, Kuwait, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, Hungary, Qatar, I believe, and some other places too. And and it was really enlightening. And the idea was to kind of learn from them what could potentially happen here and what artists might be faced with should an authoritarian um, political structure get introduced in the United States. And sure enough, it has.
Yeah.
And so now, over the past couple months, 2 or 3 months, I've now shifted the series to talking with American artists and using this series as a way to talk with them about how authoritarianism directly impacts them as artists, their artistic process, and also as human beings. But in authoritarian regimes, anybody who knows a little bit about history, artists are usually one of the first groups that gets targeted by the government that's in power, the fascist government. So I really appreciate you taking part in the series. I know you've been playing hardcore for how many years now? Um,
I mean, on and off since '98,
yeah,
probably. Yeah.
yeah. Okay, great. So it's a real pleasure to speak with you about this. And um, it's a and I always like to start off by just saying how I admire you for taking part in the series and having the courage to, you know, to go and to speak publicly about what's going on because a lot
Of
of people,
course. Yeah. I mean,
yeah,
as the current climate changes every day, I do feel that I have the ability to do that. Who knows if, a year from now, if 3 years from now, I have issues when I next time I try to leave the country, but I'd like to still keep talking and keep having an opinion on the things that I see around me. You
yeah,
know, I
absolutely.
don't want to just be quiet while they come for others around me. You know.
Right, right. So that's a good place to start actually, is did you find yourself after the election and especially after stuff after Trump started filling his cabinet with really scary people, did you the Tulsi Gabbards and the Pete Hegseths and the Kash Patels, people and not to mention Elon Musk, the whole surveillance kind of
Yeah.
aspect. Did you find yourself at a crossroads where you had to make a conscious decision as to whether or not you were going to talk openly about your political beliefs or not, or was it a non-issue for you and you just were going to do it either way?
I don't want to be, so I don't want to just like scream about it all the time because then I think it's lost. So I do want to, I'm someone who's been straight edge a long time, vegan a long time. So I think there is a degree of like voting with your dollars, so to speak. So it is one of those things where at a certain point, I just don't want to use Twitter anymore. There's things you don't want to support.
Right.
Um,
Right.
so when it comes to speaking publicly about things like Palestine or just a lot of the Doge stuff, I want to make comments here and there. I want to share things that I think are relevant, but I don't necessarily want to share every single thing. I don't. The internet as it is now is so much doom scrolling
Right.
that I find myself just using the internet less more than I want to. But it feels false to just try to post like puppies and food and happy shit, mixed in um, with, atrocities. And, but
Right.
it is hard to not just develop a thick skin and not to become super apathetic. I mean,
Yeah.
this, like, for example, you referenced Pete Hegseth. Like, it's wild that he didn't lose his job after the Signal chat stuff.
Right.
So that's the thing. I was talking to somebody about the amount of like, oh, we got you now with like Trump's shit from like the 2016, the Access Hollywoods and all this stuff that came about and didn't torpedo,
Right.
that it seems like some people are just like completely, impervious to anything,
Right.
and I don't know how, because, linking a journalist into like secret military operations doesn't have someone lose their credentials, but here we are.
Yeah.
The Secretary of War can do that, I guess.
Right. Secretary of War.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Just calling it now.
yeah.
You know, it's just so, every day there's still no way to really come to grips with what's going on, and it just that there's no rationality to it. And
Mm,
I kind of grew up with a bit of a punk rock streak too. I wasn't like straight edge or hardcore or
mhm.
anything, but I embraced that kind of spirit and really appreciated that. But it was like, it just seems like now, the punk rockers are the people of character and values. And it was like in the 90s or the 80s, the whole thing was reversed. It was all about like, oh, these are just like trash people. They're just rebel, that they're rebels and they're social outcasts, misfits,
Mhm.
but like what you're talking about with a lack of accountability, um it's just, I mean, do you find it disorienting as somebody who comes from like a punk background, that like you have sort of a moral high ground?
Well, I mean, the thing that I think is more odd to me is that so much of punk was, anti-establishment and anti-racist, or just, had opinions on things. There are bands like Dead Kennedys talking about, the Khmer Rouge and things like that. There was all the anarcho stuff in the UK. Whereas now, I think there's a fair amount of apoliticalness, and I don't think that
Mm,
one needs to be like a card carrying Democrat or a card carrying, any member of a political party. I mean, but I think there should be some degree of like being aware of it, and it feels like having a song against like Nazis feels like a broken record, but I mean, there is a fair amount of hate in this nation, and there's a fair amount of people that are willing to fight and are willing to vote and make those racist things a reality. There are people mourning someone who said that Martin Luther King was a bad guy and that the Civil Rights Act, was bad.
right.
And that's 2025. That's the country we live in, and that's honestly very hard to take.
Mhm. Do you think in a sense or in any way that like punk rock kind of failed, as far as like well, all of the changes it wanted to implement, it seems like now we're not just going back to the 70s or the 60s.
No,
We're going back to the 1890s.
mhm.
You know?
I mean, but it shouldn't be fully on the shoulders of any one counterculture, you
Right.
know?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not going to take credit for this idea, but, it's been said that there are things like, through hardcore, you have, I mean, I'm not an Earth Crisis guy, but you can't deny that you can get veggie burgers in a lot more places. And I think there were people in the 90s that were really championing vegetarianism and veganism more than in any other subculture. I mean, if I want to just like put my own subculture on a higher level, we in punk you see people being canceled for infractions of infractions, so to speak. I'm not trying to say that people shouldn't get canceled. I'm not saying that. I'm not trying to cape up for sexual predators or any of that shit. But you see people that have been canceled for very little, and then you have people that can like beat up Rihanna and still be millionaires and still fill stadiums. So there are other genres of music that do not hold people accountable. So I think punk can do all it can, but if general pop culture, I mean, think of how many people you work with or associate with or know that still eat Chick-fil-A and all these other companies that are kind of fucked up,
Yeah.
And that's to me. I know this isn't necessarily about like vegetarianism, but I'm just going to say that this is just one of my bigger point of like voting with your dollars and
Yeah.
that kind of. I think there's direct action like that doesn't need to be wearing like a ski mask and like throwing a Molotov cocktail. Like there is ways to hurt corporations. But that said, like McDonald's hasn't gotten any of my money in 30 years. They're still around. So
Right.
you can be apathetic about your own actions, but
Yeah.
I don't regret it. I'm gonna keep trying to do what I can do.
Absolutely. Yeah. I want to go back to a point that you made a couple of minutes ago, which is that you sense that there's an apolitical streak or strain in punk rock these days. Why do you think that is, and where do you think why do you think that came about?
I think there's certain degrees of like punk and hardcore that it is just a genre versus a subculture, if that makes sense. It's just another thing you like. Like I like punk music, and I like horror movies, and I like the fall, the season, not the band. It's just like I think it just becomes another thing. You see people.
Yeah.
I mean, this is just me being on a high horse about being straight edge and vegan, but like there are aspects that I think. I mean, I don't think there's a lot of like MAGA, like the MAGA like punk shit and like the Christian punk shit is like kind of its own world.
Right.
Like there's Christian punk bands that are gigantic that I can't name that are bigger than anything I've ever done combined multiplied.
Right.
But it's like its own world, and that's fine.
Sure.
Um, but I think you just have people that you get, as I said, preaching to the choir, so people don't want to listen to, you know, ideas they've heard their whole time, and people just, I think people just grow apathetic about it. I think I hope that people aren't just saying like "Free Palestine" just because it's like another salutation to say at the end of a sentence. I hope people are thinking about it.
Sure.
But even if some degree, some percentage of it is just a salutation, like at least hopefully that there's someone else hearing it that it means something to them. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. Yeah. To what extent did all this surprise you? I mean, like, uh, for
which thing are we talking about?
yeah, well, I was going to say, 2016, but then also, um, last year. What
Well,
as somebody who see, I always feel like people who are into punk rock really more than any other. Yeah, and this is me being a stupid rock critic and just generalizing.
Sure,
But
sure.
I really do feel like punk rockers have their finger on the pulse of culture and society and the way that it operates, and like capitalism and structures, economic structures. They just always the best conversations I've had about like how America works are generally with people who like punk music. Um,
Mhm.
and so I'm just like, I'm curious, to what extent did you think that this was inevitable, or did it just kind of blindside you, with with both 2016 and then also 2024?
I mean, I think with 2016, I'll cite that we had friends that had like a election result watching party kind of thing. Like party's like a strong word, but there was like eight of us, six of us. It wasn't like a tremendous amount of people. Um, but as the night went on, and we could see that Trump was like gonna win, the party took like a very like grave direction, and like one of the people was crying. Like we all just kind of like left because it was like, oh, and that's just like that was a lesbian that was at this party, that was just like someone who feels that like this is how America feels about people like me, you know. Um, and then the first election, the first presidency went through. He was kind of like a joke the way we kind of all thought he was. I mean, obviously he did negative things for the country, but also like didn't do a lot of the shit he said he would. Like I'm, as someone who lives in Texas, I don't want a fucking border wall going through Big Bend National Park. I think it's a beautiful place in this country. Not that, I mean, a wall is like the most old tech, but still, like the implications aside, just purely for an aesthetic reason, like it's why are you trying to mar this country with a fucking wall
Yeah.
in the middle of a fucking desert? That like you're anyway. Um, but then when Biden won, it was one of those things where, okay, good. I mean, not like I'm the giant Joe Biden fan, but
Mhm.
obviously the lesser of two evils, like by a mile.
Yeah.
And but with January 6th and all that, the fact that people treated Trump like an upstanding citizen and a man of character, instead of just being like, lock him up, this is an insurrection. They expected this child to like walk away with his head held high, like I was bested. And all it did, that's the thing with I think the Democrats are kind of trying to like be the bigger person in a lot of political discourse, and just get fucked over and over again.
Yeah.
I mean, even what's going on right now with the impending government shutdown, I don't um,
Mhm.
ultimately Trump's just gonna, if he's just gonna start firing people and not laying them off, but terminating them
Mhm.
as like that's what I'm going to do because the Democrats won't make this deal. I mean, he was going to do that anyway.
Exactly.
Think of the hundreds, if not thousands, of people that lost their job
That's
because
right.
of Elon Musk.
That's right.
Think about that's the thing. Like
Yeah.
it's not a fair situation. The fact that we have so many conversations on fucking gerrymandering are like it's insane to me. And it's hard to every day I look at BBC, I look at the Guardian, like I look at a few things just to kind of see what's going on in the world. I mean, there's you know spend 10 minutes looking at Haiti and you'll feel that you're living in the greatest country on earth, because there are places that are significantly in worse situations than we are,
Sure.
and you can't deny that.
Mhm.
But I mean, I don't see that things are improving. I don't see that
Mhm.
things are going to get better. I mean, there's shootings all the time.
Mhm.
Well, we're not even putting a band-aid on that situation. We're not doing anything about that.
Right.
We're just gonna let So it's hard to not just just open the Guardian, look at it for 2 minutes, and not just shut it, and
Yeah.
just try to like just focus on what's directly in front of you.
right.
but you kind of can't do that all the time.
I mean, just the simple fact that you have to read and get your news from another country is insane. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, because the Guardian's my go-to source too, and it's
Mhm.
like, for crying out loud. I mean, like, and New York Times is like, you know, half the time I check out their front page and I'm like, you guys are just not in touch with reality. Like,
Yeah.
it's just not at all. And then the Washington Post, of course, was, their editorial board was totally gutted,
Yeah.
before the election. Bezos deleted their editorial supporting Kamala Harris, or endorsing her for president.
Yeah.
Mm. But just that alone, I mean, just the fact that you have to read another country's reporting on us to make sense of what's going on, that in and of itself is it's pretty nuts. But how do you kind of um I guess we can just turn to this topic now. Is what keeps you going? What keeps you hopeful at this point in time? I usually leave this to the end, but I kind of like to do
Yeah.
now.
I mean, I don't know if it's like morbid curiosity, it is a matter of just seeing what'll happen next. But also just like, I'm doing all I can to resist my own apathy to the situation,
Yeah,
straight white male, I've got it on easy street, so to speak, on a lot of ways.
right.
But at the end of the day, like, I don't want to avoid those conversations. I will talk politics with people at my job, and I work in a blue collar, job, a lot of people of all backgrounds, whether they be, there's a couple white dudes there, but it's largely a Hispanic. I mean, I live in Texas, so that shouldn't be too shocking that I work with a lot of, first and second generation Mexican Americans,
Right.
um, but having those conversations, because I want people to understand, whether I'm talking to people that are just like, oh, Trump's going to get rid of overtime tax, and that's all I care about. And I'm an hourly employee. I don't pay attention. That's like my single issue, and you have people like that are just like, well, Trump's going to get rid of the overtime tax. It's like, yeah, maybe, but he says a lot of shit. And then I just also want to be someone to talk shit on what's going on. And I don't want people to think they're crazy, like that they're not, that I'm also seeing what's going on, and that yeah, this shit's fucked up.
Yeah.
And that, and that's to be, it's saying to try to be an ally just seems like so phony, but like, I just want to like have real conversations with people that are not, these are just like regular ass dudes that are not coming from punk or coming from any kind of subculture, but
Right.
just people that, I mean, I've talked to guys that are like in their 50s that I think do not have their finger on the pulse, get little bits of and like, talked about, just having a conversation with someone about Israel, Palestine first, it's just like, do you know that, as many Americans, less Americans died in the Vietnam War than Palestinians have died at this point. And that was 2 weeks ago, so, and that number hasn't changed. So it's like, this is not a matter of self-defense. The idea of calling this a war of self-defense is crazy,
Yeah.
because you can't have 1,600 people die and then have to kill 65,000 in retribution, or whatever. Please don't quote me on those exact numbers, but
Sure.
those are not wildly wrong. That is not self-defense.
Yeah.
That is this is genocide. Even if you want to say it's ethnic cleansing to put, a fucking little spin on it to make it seem nicer, like, look up what ethnic cleansing means. It's not nice. It's just one of the pieces of genocide.
Yeah.
And to say that is what you get for standing up for yourself after Israel's kind of been, just fucking you over for years.
Right.
That does not, I don't know. The fact that that's even a conversation in this country is crazy.
Yeah.
This is, this is just another genocide going on that we're a party to, that you and I are both contributing financially to every day.
Absolutely.
And that sucks.
Mm-hmm. I think one of the most maddening things, as far as watching corporate traditional media, is that there's no acknowledgement that the strategies that are being used in the Middle East, to decimate and cleanse, ethnically cleanse the Palestinians, and the terminology in particular, is now being co-opted by Trump against people in blue cities.
Yeah.
This idea of like, okay, so you're against me, well then you're a terrorist,
Yeah.
and if you're a terrorist, then you're an existential threat to this country. So we have to have troops come into the city, and that I I don't see that connection. I don't see a lot of people making that connection, and that's just very, very worrying.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And it's a lot of like saying the quiet part out loud,
right.
and broadcasting it, and like codifying it into law. I mean, yeah, I mean, I live I live in Austin,
Mm-hmm.
but it's still Texas. So I would be sort of surprised if we got the National Guard, just because it is, the Ted Cruz state, the Greg Abbott state, all Ken Paxton, the various like four horsemen of the apocalypse, like just evil shitheads. But like,
Right.
we're still a place that had, Black Lives Matter protests. We still,
Right.
we have we have people that feel strongly about the injustices of the world, and that in my opinion, are on the right side of history.
Yeah.
But it's still Texas, and I still think there's, other places that the Republican Party will want to target more,
Mm-hmm.
just because they want to make an example out of people.
We'll see. Do you think it's possible that we might, whether it be a few months from now or a year, that we might have military presence at concert venues?
I mean, not maybe in your like your festivals, like, but I would be. I mean, I think even at like your South by Southwest, there's like an army recruitment table.
Yeah.
But I don't see us getting full like stormtroopers like for everything. Sure, nothing that I would attend. But if you want to have that for your like your Riot Fest, your Lollapaloozas, your Bonnaroos, your various like 100,000 people style events.
Right.
But I mean, it just depends on, what I think I'd like to think that we're not at that point.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Whether we get military presences at, if any kind of just, legally sanctioned protest has triple the security than it used to. I also see like, I expect that they'll pull the various like Secret Service guard off of like Biden and stuff like that, like to put them on your various like Fourth Reich dudes. Like I see them doing more like lawfare and more. I mean, like I think it's once again treating Trump like an adult, like the whole like presidential photo of like an auto pen, like in an official capacity, like, that dude shouldn't be. That dude's not an adult. Like
That's right.
That's like a 10-year-old having like a no girl sign on their clubhouse situation. Like this is childish bullshit, and the idea that this person has no decorum, is crazy. And like, I'm not a politician's guy. I think it takes a certain kind of maniac that wants to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So whether or not, I mean, if you're running for like town council or something like small time local politics thing, I get it.
Mm-hmm.
But when you are getting into like the national spectrum, I don't know. I don't think that I'm the smartest guy in the room in every situation. I don't want to try to tell somebody what to do. You know, if it's up to my own, like I want to just live my own life of like peace and equality and just move on, lead by example.
Absolutely.
And obviously, it's not always what you can do in the current climate, but
Yeah.
I would love to just be able to do that, you know?
Absolutely. So you have a couple minutes left. I wanted to ask you the last question I wanted to ask you before uh, um, I, you can give some plugs of your websites and stuff. It sounds to me like you you find the most value in terms of what you can do to help make things better, engaging with people, having conversations
Yeah,
with people. Is that kind of what
I
you?
do. And I think it is in the same way as someone who's like been a supervisor for a while. I think one on one, like I'm here, you like, let's bounce ideas. Like, because I don't, as I said, I don't think that I'm right about everything, you know? And if you want to show me what your side is,
Yeah.
I think that's fair. I mean, I don't think there's anyone who's going to convince me that Trump's a good guy, that these guys have the best interest of the country, that this is self defense. You know, all the various like things that I don't non-starter conversations. But if you want to try to explain to me, like I'm game to hear why you think that. Um,
Yeah.
but I think that is important to, I mean, to engage with people and to bring a light to certain things that maybe they don't think about. I mean, as I said, if nothing else, I would love it if you're not at all familiar that someone just Google what's going on in Haiti right now. Google, you know, there's a lot of things that are going on in this world that are bad, even if they're not just what's directly in front of you.
Yeah.
It's good to not just like to not be, you know, not know what's going on. It's good to just have like some degree of knowledge about what's happening on this planet.
Absolutely. Okay. So cool. Before time runs out, Plan on a Chain, Ritual Routine, coming out October 3rd on Revelation Records.
Yes.
And I'll be writing about this too separately.
Okay.
Love the record. It's just
Thank you. Thank you.
dynamite. Really stoked about it. Would you like to plug any websites?
We
Bandcamp?
have, I mean, Bandcamp, and you know, it's all the standard streaming services. Depending on when this comes out, we have a East Coast weekend. I think it's like October 22nd. Around then, it's Kingston, New York, Providence, Rhode Island, Meriden, Connecticut, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and New Brunswick, New Jersey. And
Cool.
then the next week after that,